and against our zoning regulations, which don't allow two towers within a mile of each other. Couldn't hear me?
Joan, you need to kind of wrap up, please. It's been 3 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think it would be useful also to provide substantial evidence of the harmful effects of EMFs contained in a written record for AT&T. I would be happy to work on this project, and I'm sure Pasca would as well. She has abundant evidence, very professionally, spreadsheets on the access we have already to radiation. We have adequate coverage. I would also hope that the town lawyer might be instrumental in advising us in this effort. One last item. There was a case in Los Angeles in which cell towers were turned down a few years back. A few years back. They were also to be used for first responders communication and were to be placed on or near the firehouse. The firefighters were aware of the dangers and did not want to work near a cell tower. Don't our families deserve the same protection? Let's put people above industry, and please, let's have a united board. I think we'd be much stronger in getting done what we need to get done. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Just a point of order, there's several meetings going on in Town Hall tonight. If you're here for ZBA or
Zoning. Or,
charter revision, wetlands.
This
So-
is not the place.
There's another room down the hall and then a conference room upstairs.
There's a information board right outside that'll tell you what room they are in.
Everyone else is here for a good time, Monday night.
We came for the cell tower.
Are you signed up for public comment, sir?
This is for cell tower?
If you're
Yes.
signed up for public comment, yeah, okay.
So Cheryl Sharkham?
Yeah.
So I was, ladies and gentlemen, just if they're here for a zoning board of appeals meeting or a wetlands meeting or charter revision commission meeting, you're in the wrong spot. This is a board of selectmen meeting. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Shelcom. I'm at 204 Wisconsin Road in Brookfield, obviously. In 1994, the U.S. Air Force published a 32-page report titled Radio Frequency, Microwave Radiation, Biological Effects, and Safety Standards. A review authored by Scott Bolin, the supervising agency was Rome Laboratory at Griffiths Air Force Base in New York. To this day, many, if not most, governmental agencies and scientists in North America and abroad maintain the position the radio frequency and microwave radiation are only damaging to the human body at power densities high enough to cause a heating effect, so-called thermal effect, like a microwave oven. The position, while completely unsupported by fact, is very convenient for the multi-billion-dollar telecommunications industry, cell phones, Wi-Fi, as well as the military's own use of the same technologies. In fact, the serious biotoxic consequences of non-thermal RF and microwave radiation have been known for decades by our governments and military. This 1994 USAF report states on page 2 under the heading of biological effects, non-thermal responses can be less noticeable and are often more difficult to explain than thermal effects. These responses are related to the disturbances in the tissue not caused by heating. Electromagnetic fields can interact with the bioelectric functions of the irradiated human tissue. Research conducted in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe suggests that the human body may be more sensitive to the non-thermal effects of RF MW radiation. Page 18 of the report. Non-thermal disruptions have been observed to occur at power densities that are much lower than are necessary to induce thermal effects. Soviet researchers have attributed alterations in the central nervous systems and the cardiovascular systems to the non-thermal effect of low-level RF MW radiation exposure. From report's conclusion on page 18, experimental evidence has shown that exposure to low-intensity radiation can have a profound effect on the biological processes The non-thermal effects of RF MW radiation exposures are becoming important measures of biological interactions with EM electromagnetic fields, adherence to the ANSI standard, and should provide protection against harmful thermal effects and help minimize the interaction of EM fields and biological processes of the human body. In other words, this USAF report from 1994 all but states that the ANSI, American Standards Institute, was insufficient for protecting the public from the non-thermal effects of RF MW radiation. Biological effects. Exposure to the RF MW radiation is known to have biological effects on animals and humans, damage to major organs, disruption of important biological processes, and the potential risk of cancer represents the dangers of the RF MW radiation to living organisms. Pulsed radiation appears to have the greatest impact on the biological materials. The response of the biological materials to the absorption of the thermal energy is the most perceptible effect of exposure to RF MW radiation. The energy emitted from RF MW source is absorbed by the human tissue primarily as heat. In this case, the radiated energy is disposed in the molecules of the tissue. There are many reported biological effects to humans and the animals that are exposed to RF MW radiation, such as heating effect on the skin, whole body hyperthermia, local hyperthermia, carcinogenic effects, pathological reports alleging radiation-induced cancer, effect on chromosomes, mutagenic effects, lymphoblastoid transformations, oncogenic effects, cardiovascular effects, hematologic effects.
Cheryl, can you
Effect-
just kind of start to wrap up, please?
Almost done.
Thank you.
Effect of the central nervous system, behavioral effects, synergenic effects of drugs, analeptic effect in animals, immunological effect, effect on the eye, ocular sensitivity, cataracts, auditory effect. In conclusion, if the Connecticut General Statute 277A, Public Utility Environmental Standards Act, Section 1650X, Section D is applicable, we should utilize the town's right to regulate and or restrict any proposed facility now and in the future and study all health issues we may have from the towers we currently have in town. I do not consent to the Vale Road Tower or any other proposed location after reviewing all the health effects. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just as a reminder, we have 3 minutes in public comment, and we really don't want to have to shut you off, so we just try to give you an idea of when you're getting close. So, thank you.
Austin Montero.
Good evening, Austin Montero, 17 Dairy Farm Drive. Some more 5G tower talk. So first off, I'd like to publicly thank our first Selectwoman, Tara Carr, for standing up and speaking out
No problem.
about this and the negative health effects it will have. Great. All of our other public officials, we hear silence or the saying we can't do anything, which to me is unacceptable. There's a lot we can do. Second, this is much more than just one 5G tower on a Vale Road. It's about public health, as we've just heard from the last two women that spoke. It's about environmental health. It's about real estate value and really the direction of the state of Connecticut moving forward. I see this as an opportunity for us to come together as a community to set a standard and to stop this tower from being built. You have an opportunity to create a roadmap for other communities in Connecticut to follow us. But we need awareness and education first. You know, I believe if we went and knocked on 100 random doors in this town, 98 people have no clue what the hell we're even talking about here, or what the hell 5G can potentially do and will do to your health. So awareness and education is very important here. Obviously, 5G towers emit radiation at very high levels. Myself and a friend of mine measured the one right over here at the Four Corners on Friday, and the numbers are, you know, off the charts, out of control, really. And I know a lot of people have talked about the negative health impacts of these towers and what they can be, and I appreciate that coming out. Basically, 5G EMF radiation causes oxidative stress, which can lead to cell damage and potential sickness and many, many diseases, as was stated earlier. So I think we can all agree we do not want that in this community. And to me, the point that's been missing is to layer on top of that is, in our society now, oxidative stress, metabolic syndrome, nutritional deficiencies are already at a highest level ever, especially after the past 3 years. and this is only going to layer on top of what the 5G tower will bring to Brookfield and the rest of the state of Connecticut. So really not great. So what's the play? What's the solution? What can we do? As I see it, we can just push to bring more awareness and education to our community. Again, that people know there is a 5G tower potentially being built on Vale Road, and the negative effects that 5G tower can have on our health. And we can also take preventative measures individually that I won't get into now, but there's stuff you can do to protect yourself from the radiation that it will emit. And then by doing this, taking these actions, if we get enough people aware and educated, I believe we can come together in some way, shape, or form and put a stop to this and set a precedent for other towns in Connecticut to follow us and lead the way here on stopping 5G towers. So Tara, thanks. Everybody else who's fighting this, thank you also.
Elizabeth Longworth.
Don't worry. I'll be short. I'm not here regarding sewers. Okay. Good evening. Happy New Year. My name is Elizabeth Longworth. I live at 1 South Lakeshore Drive. I am here as a Brookfield resident and also the president of Candlewood Shores Tax District. My comment and question are twofold, so I will be brief. First is the fact that we as a community are extremely concerned over the influx of the Airbnb activity that is happening in our neighborhood. Our community is following the town ordinance 3.19, and I am here to find out who is monitoring the ordinance within the town, how it's being enforced. So I don't want to leave here tonight without having a name, an email, a phone number, because I'm getting inundated and we have to work together on handling this situation. I think that we all should feel safe and at ease in our own homes. Our quality of life is being completely disrupted. I also have a copy of our Brookfield application on our website, and I have yet to see a completed copy in our office. Does anybody know if they're being submitted to the town? Are they being filled out? And if so, can Candlewood Shores get a copy? It would be great to know, instead of the neighbors all blowing up our emails going, there's families in and out of the house next door weekly. It's online. They're renting the houses out per night, etc. What is the process? If there is a process, and you know that you're being made aware of the fact, because I know that there's plenty of community members that have reached out to the town of Brookfield asking and telling you that such and such address, they're violating your ordinance. What is your process? What's the procedure? I need to know so I can go back to my community and advise them. Lastly, we need to be safe. There's no background searches on any of these people that are pushing the button on the Airbnb website and moving into the house next door. With that being said, I believe you are Chief Puglisi. Nice to meet you. I also would like to let the board and the police chief know that we are 515 homes, and it's only 6 square miles. So it's a lot of homes that you can hit all at once within a short time. And I'm formally requesting more of a police presence on a daily basis. So I don't know if there's a patrol schedule. We can meet, but our cars are being stolen for 3 years now. And we have people moving in and out of the houses. We have to work hand in hand, and I'm begging you to work hand in hand, and we can do this together. So if we have an ordinance meeting on Wednesday, I need to go there and let them know what the procedure is. So I don't know how you want to go about that. If there's a name, if there's an email, do you know if there's a process? Is it being enforced, et cetera?
Thank you.
I'd love for you to get on my calendar, so schedule with Kristen as soon as possible, please.
But can I get an answer via email if I give somebody an email
Sure.
address?
Yep, we've been over this. In fact, I wanted to just say, and I don't know if I'm allowed to go here with this, but I do need to let you know that it's been looked at within recent months, and I had a meeting with the residents who requested one specific to Airbnb. Your community is a private community, is that correct?
We are all Brookfield taxpayers.
So
And it's
with the
not a private
Airbnb
community,
policy-
it is a tax district.
So you can be more restrictive with our policy? Our policy covers the whole town?
No, we are not, according to our attorney, we are not allowed to enforce it because we, as a tax district, have to follow your ordinance. And so we are going to you to find out what you're doing to enforce it.
So you can't tell your residents to not have Airbnb within?
We can tell them anything they want, but they're not going to listen.
So whose responsibility is it to enforce what those houses in your private community do?
It's not a private
private
community. The
community.
sign just says it's a private community. We're just a tax district. So you can write your tax payments off with the IRS.
Who plows your roads?
We do. Town does.
No.
No, you plow your own, that's right.
Yes.
I think the best thing would be, like Tara says, get on her schedule and.
Yeah, I'd just like an answer sooner than later, so I'm not at my board meeting saying, I don't know.
I can tell you that it won't happen this week because our land use director's away at a training session, so, but next week, if that works for you,
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
thank
you.
you.
Christine Springate? It's Springman.
Hello. I live in 44 South Lake Shore Drive. I wanted to do the second emotion, what Liz has just mentioned about the Airbnb. I'm having that experience right now, my next door neighbor, last summer. And most of the times, I'm home alone with my dog. So my neighbor now is having weekend rentals, 42 South Lake Shore Drive. And we don't know who are the people that comes in. According to the ordinance, I really didn't expect to speak tonight, but short-term rentals defined as 14 days or less to 3 short rental during any 6 months period. In my experience, there have been 4 different times that they have rented the house. And it's not fair for everyone to do that. And if it's happening to your own neighborhood, you would not love that too. So we need help. I don't know where to go. I have contacted many different people, and they just keep saying, I'm only alone. I'm only by myself. We have one attorney in our district. I don't know what else to do. Please help me. Help us. We all live in Brookfield. It's a beautiful town. Let's not ruin that. It's not a motel district or street that anybody can just come in. We pay all great amount of money to be in that lake shore, so it shouldn't be ruined by anybody just like that. We all work so hard for that, and I'd like to maintain it to be that way.
I understand. Thank you.
Siraj Thomas?
Good afternoon. My name is Rose Thomas. I'm coming from, I'm resident at 6 Park Lane. This is I come from that to say about that cell tower.
Yeah.
It's coming near our home. It's very close to our home. It's for dangerous, danger for us. So I'm just saying that our areas we are very critical for that tower. So we are just saying that it is opposite. We are not agree with this proposals.
You are a proponent of the proposal?
Yeah.
Okay, you're in favor of the tower?
No.
You're against the tower?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, cancel the cover.
I see.
That's what I want to just,
Okay.
all the details, all the people are already told about this. I don't want to explain it and again.
Right, I
So
see.
you know that's what is the problem and everything. It's very dangerous for us. This is 365 days. Every time it is getting the radiation from the. It's a very big tower is coming over. It's very close to our home. That's why we are very opposite for that.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks for coming in.
Lovely Taman?
My name is Lovely Jaimon. I am also a resident of Brookfield, 8 Park Lane. And I'm also opposing to this cell tower coming in our area.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Heard
Thank
you
you
loud
for
and clear.
coming in.
Thank you. And I believe that was the last public comment. Okay, thank you. All right, well, I appreciate everybody coming forward and taking the time tonight to share with us. It's a lot of work to be done, that's for sure. First presenter, I should say, is Jennifer Heaton-Jones from HRRA. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with HRRA, this is a learning opportunity, as it was for me 12 months ago.
And I will try to explain. Bear with me because I did not bring my glasses.
Going to borrow mine?
I'll be fine. So, all right. Thank you. Good evening. I'm sorry I have my back to everyone. I'm Jennifer Heaton-Jones. I'm the Executive Director of the HRA, the Housatonic Resources Recovery Authority. I've actually been with the authority for 13 years. The purpose of my presentation is to give you an overview of the HRA, the current state of Connecticut's waste system, which is in crisis, and the challenges and opportunities available to Brookfield. My goal is to help you decide what, if anything, the town of Brookfield would like to do to provide better services to the community regarding material management. So for those of you who are not familiar with the HRA, we are an authority that was created in 1986 to address the state's need to build capacity due to all of the municipal landfills being closed and to provide oversight and management of the regional waste system. That includes municipal solid waste, recycling, hazardous waste, and public education. The HRA is currently, I'm sorry, I should have told you, you can go to the third slide. The HRRA is currently 14 municipalities. Currently, for Selectman or Selectwoman Tara Carr is your member, and Sheldon Kahn is your alternate in her absence. Currently, voting is proportional to the population of the member town, with Brookfield carrying 7 votes. And HRRA our administrative office is actually located here in Brookfield at the Old Town Hall.
And they're good tenants.
Thank you. So next slide, municipal responsibilities. So under state statute, municipalities must provide disposal of solid waste to residents. That can be accomplished in various ways, from curbside collection to transfer stations, also known as residential recycling centers. These are several additional statutes and regulations that are listed here that municipalities are responsible for, and that's where HRRA comes in. So next slide. So HRRA's responsibilities, I'm not going to go through the whole list. There are many services that we provide to Brookfield and to our member towns, from negotiating waste disposal contracts to interfacing with your haulers, also known as collectors, ensuring their compliance for state statute, to public education in the school systems and to the general public. Next slide, please. So most people don't think about their trash or even know where it goes. And I bet most of you just really, your only real concern usually is, when is trash day? And that's about it. So household trash doesn't just consist of the material that's from your kitchen. It's vast. It can sometimes be complicated, from residents needing disposal for items that cannot be put at the curb, such as tires, electronics, scrap metal, their deceased parents' oxygen tank. These are the calls we get. Old medicine, sharps, their hazardous waste in a month where there's no disposal options. Rubber mulch from their playset, from their backyard, mattresses, and so on. And solid waste management is a universal issue. It affects every single person in the world. Think about that for a second. In Brookfield alone, no matter your financial status, your ethnic origin, every single person generates solid waste. Not every person owns a home, or has children, or has pets, or uses public transportation, but every single human being makes garbage. Every one of your constituents. So, but we ignore it. It's not a big deal. It's not a problem. We make it go away. We think we make it go away. But that's what I'm here to make sure we bring it to the awareness to every one of our member towns, that it is an issue. We are in a crisis. Recycling is a mandate for every single person in the state, every institution, every school, every municipality. We are all responsible for ensuring that we provide disposal and that we recycle and recycle right. Next slide, please. So that waste stream, that complicated waste stream, is made up of generators and transporters and transfer stations and processors and disposal facilities. And our generators range from single-family households, multifamily units, apartment buildings to complexes, private communities, small businesses, restaurants, corporations, retailers, schools, and so on, all in here in this town of Brookfield, every day generating tons of material, millions in Connecticut. And managing one waste is not just as simple as just deciding what bin, a garbage can and a recycling bin. It's solid waste that's made up of construction and demo and textiles and organics and mattresses and so on. And the truth is, we have a problem even beyond capacity. We have a problem with where it's coming from and the choices being made before it ever even hits the waste stream. So it's important to recognize that waste is local. The success of any program is dependent on your residents and the businesses and their buy-in and their behavior. Next slide. This is simply just to give you an insight. I added it in for the flow of material from the generator to the end disposal. Much of the system is managed and facilitated by the HRA. Next slide, please. So now, how does this impact Brookfield? This is a map of the region of the 14 member towns. We run from Kent down to Weston and Wilton. Out of the 14 municipalities, there are 12 residential drop-off locations that serve each of our communities. Only Brookfield and the town of Sherman are without a local drop-off. Sherman uses New Milford, and currently Brookfield uses Danbury Mom and Pop. It's much more expensive for residents to use either facility than a resident of Danbury or a resident of New Milford, because they are both privately operated. They're basically, your residents are being upcharged by these private operators, where when a municipality operates their own facility, they're basically covering their cost. So beyond the cost is to be considered is the ease and convenience to your residents. So the question is, are they doing the right thing? Are your residents doing the right thing with the material they have based on the distance and cost that it occurs on them when it comes time to dispose of a particular material? Next slide, please. The problem, Connecticut continues to struggle with its waste disposal system. In July of 2022, the largest incinerator facility in Hartford closed. This picture is from Danbury, by the way, leaving many towns scrambling to find other options and sending hundreds of thousands of additional tons of waste to out-of-state landfills. Regional landfill capacity is scheduled to shrink by 40% in the next 5 years. Relying on other states is a temporary stopgap solution that puts our communities and taxpayers at the mercy of other states for regulations, increased cost, and environmental impacts. When facilities shut down, even for a day, this is what happens to waste in Danbury. At no fault to Oak Ridge, they can't move the material that is coming from our communities. And at some point, when the large transfer stations can't take the aggregate of material, The local private haulers will not be able to collect at the curb, at your curb, leaving your residents with trash that they cannot get rid of. So the solution, as we move on, is we must reduce and rethink how to handle our waste. We need to provide easy, convenient, and accessible programs for source separation of material that shouldn't be thrown away in the first place. From food scraps to textiles to scrap metal, it can all be recycled and diverted from the general waste stream, not in that pile, and creating a capacity that we don't have today, reducing costs. Next slide, please. This is just a slide to show you where the waste-to-energy plants are located in the state. So the 4 black stars are the existing working plants, and the 2 orange stars are where they've already closed, creating that reduced capacity. So you know that the state produces 3.5 million tons of waste a year. We have capacity for 2.7 million tons. And in our region, we produce 146,000 tons. In the town of Brookfield, you make up about 6% of that material. You're the 5th highest producing member town in the region for solid waste. Next slide. So the infrastructure throughout the entire region is aging. It's time to address what member towns can do to provide better access for sustainable material management. Next slide. And this is my final slide. Items to be aware of. So we are facing a shortage of MSW processing capacity with that Mid-Con Mira closure. Recycling markets have an impact to local recycling that impacts your local collectors and residents. The state's comprehensive material management strategy plan outlines possible future mandates that are listed here from stewardship programs, regional solid waste collection, unit-based pricing, and organics, which I consider all possible unfunded mandates. However, to be positive here, we also have some opportunities. So for the first time since I've been at the HRA, the federal government is funding solid waste infrastructure projects through a competitive grant process. It is a non-matching grant, so we don't have to get matching funds, and it's a great opportunity to provide positive change. So this is where I leave it to you as the leaders of Brookfield to decide if you want to begin to look into what better services you can provide your growing community. If these grants could help establish infrastructure you do not have. The HRA is applying currently for the EPA infrastructure grant. It has a maximum award of $4 million. We will be applying for the entire $4 million, and it will be distributed out throughout the region, depending on need. One thought I had was to use the funds to begin a study for the town of Brookfield, starting with surveying the community, what their needs are, to an engineer to provide plans and options for a recycling center or drop-off location, or to help collaborate even with a neighboring municipality to expand their recycling center to allow for more use for Brookfield residents, where they will not be charged the upcharge. This is an opportunity to brainstorm and to consider your needs. The current grant application that we are applying for today is due February 15th. It is a fast-track grant. We are told there are possible future funding that could be considered later in the next few years, but the current grant is a 3-year project. I know that's a lot of information. I actually could talk about this for hours, but I have like 10 minutes. So here I am, just trying to feed you some information, give you knowledge, let you understand that there is a need, probably that you don't even know, and I think you need to speak to your community to find out what do they need and how are they managing this material today and what struggles do they find. We get the phone calls, so I know, but I think it'd be important for the town to officially receive that information from the community. So last slide is just my contact information. I hope it's been helpful to start the conversation, and I'm happy to answer questions now or can hold them because it sounds like you have a long meeting, and you can get back to me at another time. So
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
This was so informative, very horrifying, I must say, much like the cell phone tower situation, but very important. And I think as we, think locally, act globally, you have to really consider all of this. And I am opportunistic, so I like the idea of the grant, but I would want to know more about follow-on costs and what that would mean. But I also like your idea of a survey or some kind of, to get the pulse of what the residents would want.
yes, and I would just leave with knowing that it's not like a magic button, obviously. You know, yes, if you were to get funding for infrastructure, and the question would be long-term cost to the town, there could or could not be long-term cost. It all depends on how it's built and how it's administered. We do have municipalities that have recycling centers / transfer stations that cover their cost. There's pretty much net zero. They manage it to that degree, depends on what you're collecting and what you're charging your residents, whether you have an annual permit versus giving them away for free. And some municipalities look at it as, this is a service we're providing our community. We're providing this service and it's a cost. And other communities look at it and say, it's a service, but we don't want to have it as a cost. We need to find ways to cover that cost.
Yeah.
Depending on the number of days of operation, for labor costs to infrastructure costs. So that's part of the study that could be done to decide how big would the facility be if we were to want one, how many days would it be open, what would we provide, and how would those costs be covered for
So do
future
you
land.
need to know from us if we're in before the 14th of February, or?
I think what I would like to know, and we don't need that answer tonight, is in the next week or two to say, we would maybe be interested in seeing, would there be funding for a study? Not that there would be funding, there'd be too much work to be done to actually submit for infrastructure itself.
Premature, yeah.
It's premature just because you don't, where would it be built? How much
Right.
land do you need? What would you
Right.
provide? But this is an opportunity to say, okay, we are interested in at least moving forward in a study. And we can go from there.
Okay. What do you, Harry's on his way out.
I just got to take this call.
You're supposed to pause with him gone? What do you
We
think,
can take a
Steve?
break for a second if you want. I
You
think she
know,
needs to plug back in.
this has been a problem in our town and other towns for, as you say, 40 years. Brookfield used to use New Milford, and that was fine until they privatized their recycling, and they wanted us to subsidize 40% of New Milford's costs of
Right.
recycling. And we were 6% of their volume, but they wanted us to pay 40% of the cost. Then we went to Oak Ridge, right?
Went to Danbury, correct?
Yeah, and Oak Ridge was more than willing to take our residents, and now you're saying Oak Ridge no longer?
No, Oak Ridge does. So
Okay.
your Brookfield residents are able to use the mom and pop. I don't know if any of you have been to the mom and pop.
Yeah, I have.
And this is what I do for a living. I go to transfer stations.
Scary.
It is scary. It is not a fun facility to drive into as a resident. Even as someone who, I'm going through the back door, it is dangerous. There are large trucks coming in and out, and you're in a private vehicle trying to navigate through this large transfer station. So they are able to use the facility. They are upcharged. It is costly for them, and residents are often looking for the least expensive disposal option, and if it's not there, what are they doing with the material is the question that I believe all of you should be asking.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues is ease of use.
Yes.
It really is, because we see with our e-waste and hazardous chemicals, you do them at the high school, people will have 500 cars from Brookfield go, and great, they recycle, but Bethel will have one a month later, or whatever their schedule is, and you get 2 cars from Brookfield. People
Right.
don't want to drive to another town. They want the ease, they want to go to their own town. That's why it's so important. And we do need recycling, and it's going to be mandated in some way, shape, or form in the future. It is.
I want to
We
get
can't continue the way we're going now.
Why did they close the plants in Hartford and Middletown?
The plant in Hartford was closed because it was aging, and it needed over $350 million in renovation, and the state was not willing to fund it. It's a quasi-government agency that runs that facility, and they didn't have the funding from their member towns. We're also going to see tip fees increasing, and I wouldn't be surprised if you begin to see your private hauler rates increasing due to the cost of disposal and the need for more infrastructure in the state, which we're working on currently with HRA.
And those are waste-to-energy sites, right?
Correct.
So we're taking the waste, they're burning it, creating energy, and selling the energy,
Correct.
right? But that's also a short-term, long-term solution, a long-term, short-term solution, right? That wasn't the initial goal of
It's a long-term solution. Waste to energy is efficient. There's a lot of arguments. I'm not a scientist regarding the difference between landfilling and waste to energy. The difference is when you're burying it in the ground and you have leachate and you have water contamination versus something that incinerates and you're contaminating the air. The real solution is waste reduction. Let's stop making so much garbage. Let's stop sending so much to incineration and providing solutions to our communities where we can collect the material, source separate it, and then dispose of it properly and have it recycled, repurposed, etc.
I think you do a great job in your social media account with education and outreach, so I'm happy to continue to share as I can, but the education piece of this is just so important and huge. As far as the grant, I'm interested in seeing where we are and trying to delineate if it's something that Brookfield can sustain or support and sustain long-term. If our chunk of that 4 million would be the study, then I think that's probably a good place to start.
So we'd be investigating whether or not we as the staff can look into if we would be eligible to provide funding to the town of Brookfield for that study if
Okay.
you want some of that funding.
Are you guys in favor of that?
No, absolutely. Somebody's willing to pay for a study? I think that's a no-brainer.
Okay? All
There's
right.
no match, right?
There's no match.
Okay.
There's no match. So, again, we are here for your community. We are here for the residents if you ever have questions regarding what to do with anything and to provide better service. So,
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Appreciate it.
I would just like to apologize, Jennifer, for having to leave. I did have a property management company that I do work for that had an emergency. I just had to.
Thank you.
Thank you very
No
much.
problem. Thank you.
Thanks again, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is Jacqueline Salem from the Historic District Commission. Yeah, this is another good news story, right?
These are just for you guys, because I know you want to learn
Thank
more
you.
about this exciting, this is the tip of the iceberg.
Thank you.
Okay. Full disclosure. Do you need my address? Do they need my address?
I think just state it for the record, sorry.
Okay,
You are a
that's okay.
resident.
It's all right. It's Jacqueline Salem, 148 Wisconneer Road, and I am here as chair of the Brookfield Historic District Commission. Last Thursday night at our meeting, the Brookfield Historic District Commission unanimously approved us doing a new study for Historic District Number 2 here in Brookfield. The area that we're looking at is the Ironworks area, down near the Craft Center and Brookfield Market, the hotel, and some of the historic properties down there. The Ironworks area is, significant because it is part of the development of the town of Brookfield. It was a center for, community business and industry, et cetera, and there are several buildings down there that are still in their original locations, different architectural styles, and they're important not only to the history of Brookfield, but to the overall history of the country. I've already spoken to the DECD, State Historic Preservation Office. They are willing to give us a grant because we're a certified local government, and I'll just give you guys the 10-cent tour of that. There's more information in there. We became a certified local government, I think, when Bonnie Smith was the first select woman, and it was about I was on the Historic District Commission already. I think it was around 1995. So we entered into a legal contract and commitment with the state government and the federal government to preserve and protect our historic resources, and also to increase awareness about, the unique resources around the country. So basically to be a good preservation partner. The only thing that's been accomplished since we did that, and that was in 96 and 97 because it was the first requirement, was to have historic surveys done. So 188 surveys were done out of approximately 500 historic properties. And then just to say, a historic property is 50 years or older. However, all historic properties are not historically significant. Just to, otherwise, there'd be millions of projects all over the country that were done this way. So in the packet there, you'll see our track record. We basically have not done anything else since then. So I would say that we haven't held up our end of the bargain, and the coordinator at a time not too far after that sort of resigned. I became the one by default. And so we've been trying to do things, but it hasn't been specific to the certified local government. So the DECD is willing to give us a historic preservation enhancement grant that because we're a CLG, we qualified for that. And it's a $20,000 no-match grant to do the study for the possibility of having a second historic district. And then once the study is done, then we have to go through the regular process if it's found that it will become one. I'm highly confident that they will agree that it should become a historic district. And then we'll go through the process after that, which is voting by property owners, et cetera. But that's way down the road. So right now, I'm just, looking for approval and that you are all in agreement that we should take the $20,000 non-matching grant and do the study.
Is there any requirements on, what is the onus on the town? If we take the grant,
Okay.
We've taken grants
I
where
know.
we gave control of the state
Yeah, I know.
for
No.
10 years.
There's no strings, there's no preservation easements, there's nothing. The only
Okay.
thing that we have to do is,
the study.
before we submit the application, you guys to pass the resolution, whoever is the authorizing person on the grant, and you've already been through the process, Steve, so you know, and the
Yeah.
contract signatory. And then what we'll have to do if they accept, and Mary already told me Mary Dunn, who's in charge of the grants at the state, that they would give us the money. We have to get that resolution in prior to the grant application, and then we have 6 months to submit it, which I'm not going to take anywhere near that amount of time. In the packet there is a sample resolution. I know that you guys have done them before. So I'm sure that there's one in a file someplace. And, so that's all we need. So then what happens is then, once we get it, we send make an RFP, has to go to the state for approval. The RFP goes out. It's like any other grant. And the thing is that although it's a non-matching grant, we have to front the $20,000, and then they reimburse us when they get the copy of the finished report.
I see SHPO in here.
Yeah,
You see what? You see?
well, that's where the
SHPO.
grant's coming from.
Yeah, well, we haven't had a good experience with SHPO in the
Well,
past.
I thought it was
I-
a DECD grant.
huh?
Isn't it a DECD grant?
SHPO is
It's a
part of
D-
DECD.
Yeah, they're part of DECD. It's the State Historic Preservation Office, part of DECD.
The only thing I would say is if we decide to move forward with this, is that we have the town attorney look at
Mm-hmm.
the grant
Yeah,
wording to make sure that we're not committing to something that we're not sure about. We've
Right.
been
Yes.
burned on that one before.
yeah,
Okay.
no, look, I'm privy
With
to
you.
all of that, so I'm
We're-
well aware.
we're
I
together
wouldn't
on
be
this.
standing, here
So
saying
what
that,
is the
so that's
timeline
fine.
for, what's the deadline for the grant application?
It's a rolling. It's rolling, so we
Yeah,
don't.
ongoing.
And then we have a certain amount of time to spend it on the study?
Yes, I think it's a 6 month, I don't remember exactly the time frame. I read something 6 months and another thing maybe, I want to say it's 6.
And
So we
then,
ca-
I'm
So we
sorry,
pass the authorizing resolution to apply for the grant, you apply for the grant, we then get the approval for the grant, and then the clock starts and they tell you how long you have to
Right.
go out to bid, right?
Right.
Get a contractor to come.
Right, and I would say, I mean, I would say from the time, I would say it's probably about 6 months.
So it's right.
Because the report isn't gonna, I think will probably take, in my head, I'm thinking like it's a 90 to 120 day, and then you gotta figure a couple of months by the time you get the RFP out and they look at it, and then it goes out, and then we meet with people. So it's a 6 to 8 month process.
So fast forward to the conclusion of the study where they say, yes,
Mhm.
this is a historic district. What
Well,
is that,
What do we
what are the next steps beyond that?
So then the next steps beyond that is then we go through the process of making it a local historic district. So the biggest part of that is 2/3 of the residents who are within those boundaries have to agree that they want a historic district. You guys are involved in part of the process because you have to vote to say, yes, we have a historic district, but you can't really, we have to have the votes first, actually. So it would be, we would, in the process, not to, just go ahead and do it and spring it on them. They've already been aware that, we're looking to do this. I mean,
And the Craft Center is in favor of this.
Well,
looking
yeah,
for
and
this,
it's-
'cause
yes.
They can apply for grants if they're in a historic district.
yes, I mean, the other thing is, yes, they can.
Right.
They can apply for other grants that they wouldn't be able to get. Also, because Brookfield is a CLG, it's a lot, but I haven't found a grant that I didn't know about before, but like, the town can apply for what they call the Paul Brun, it's a sub-grant, which is part of the federal state historic preservation funds. So say you wanted to designate, say, all those historic buildings that are north of the Four Corners, you could manage a grant, and although you don't own the properties, you could say, this area is historically significant, and we want to help, say, do a facade program to fix everyone's, buildings. And then the town would apply for that grant, but you would manage it, but that money would be given to other people for buildings that the town doesn't own. So there's a lot of ways, because we're a certified local government also, to get money, which, I mean, honestly, it's not just the certified local government part. There's lots of grants that, we haven't really taken advantage of.
Jackie, I'm looking, can you just define the area? I'm looking at this, as far.
Yeah, so in the application I gave you a copy, a historic map of the Ironworks area towards the back. It's like the very back, after
Are
the
you talking about this?
application, last page, yeah.
Yeah, but
Okay, and the railroad tracks are in a different place. So the area that we're talking about right now includes the Brookfield Craft Center. So then that means it includes the mill building, and not the weaving studio in the back, which may or may not be non-contributing. The miller's house, which is just the one over the bridge. The forge at the top is in the property. It's non-contributing because it's a new building. The train station, the historic hotel that's right next to it, Brookfield Market, the little store that's now Lovely, which was Kohler's General Store, that building, the pillars,
which one? Oh, okay, yeah.
and then the one next to it that has the big tall pillars.
Right.
Believe it or not, that building was actually built that way, which is a strange thing. Then we talked about going down Tux Road, but there really isn't anything much left on Tux Road. I mean, we had a scissor factory, which is, one of the industries that went on, during the time of the development of Brookfield. I mean, and it's pretty much gone. AJ Tuck isn't historic, so we didn't do Tux Road. Now, whether we take in any residential properties right off the bat, because if you go partially up Ironworks Hill, there's houses there. I would discuss them with that, but right at the moment, we're trying to do the main, we can always add.
Just that little business
The little
area.
business district, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything on Pocono
Yeah,
toward this direction?
sure. Yeah, there are historic buildings on Pocono, too. I think what we were trying to do was maybe concentrate on, and I can talk to Mary Dunn about this, I think we were trying to concentrate on sort of the commercial area
Yeah.
first, and then we can always then start to work with residents and tack those on. Otherwise it becomes like a huge project, like the current Historic District Number 1 has, it's interesting, has 63 properties and 67 properties, because we're a local historic district with a National Register Historic District overlay on top of that. So, there's a little bit of variation in the boundaries, but the boundaries that it's the local district that, rules it.
Are there any buildings in there that are historic buildings registered with the state, but not, because it's not a historic district, they're not in the historic district?
They're not in historic district. Yes, actually, the buildings, all the buildings I mentioned to you are all on the Connecticut State
Okay.
Register. So they are eligible to become a local historic district, and probably eventually will try to apply for national, register historic district.
And that's as well as the center, isn't the center school a registered building, but not in the historical district?
The center, you mean the center school?
Yes.
The current center school? I don't believe that that's on the national
That's not
register.
part
No,
of
no,
this
no, no.
grant.
What's that?
That's not part of this grant.
Well, I know, but
Not in the historic.
I have been
Well,
told,
maybe
That's
we
a
save next month to
conversation for
talk
another
about,
time.
I think that's a conversation for next month. I don't want to muck the waters, but
Yeah.
no, I don't believe off the top of my head. However, what I can do is I have the lists of what are the state register, what is the national register, what is our historic district. So
Right.
you will know, like, all the significant buildings in Brookfield that are on that register currently. I mean, actually, to be honest with you, there are 4 or 5 different things in the 90s, and Bob Brown and I spent two years going through the stuff at the state, and then 2 years compiling all the lists, and then we gave the State Historic Preservation Office the list, so that's how they have them. Which is kind of normal for towns, so.
Well, I do want to thank you for your many decades of dedicated service to the town. And
I think it's
without,
30 this year.
Brookfield's been very lucky
The
to have
Historic
you.
District Commission, anyway.
Thank you for all the work you've done on all of this.
And I have an interest in the Craft Center too, because I've been there about 25 years, give or take, so, for full disclosure, anyway.
thank you very much.
Okay,
This was so informative. I
So-
look forward to moving it forward.
yeah, so I guess the first thing would be, I don't know, the resolution, right? And then you guys let me know what happens.
Yeah, so I think you would do it at the next Board of Selectmen meeting and have a resolution created by the town attorney, and then
Yep.
a discussion and a
Okay.
vote on whether we wanted
All right,
to move
so
forward
then I'll-
with that.
Yeah,
don't think
so
it would
this way
hurt.
I
think
know
it
what
would
to
help.
do next.
Right. I don't,
Just to make it official.
I'll send you the application. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Jackie. All right. And our last presenter of the evening is Chief Puglisi.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I wish I was here to talk about a grant application, but I'm here to talk about an unfunded mandate. So.
Can't win 'em
turn
all.
tides a little bit. I was asked to just make a presentation on the Public Act and the need for standards for accreditation. So the requirements of this Public Act, which talk about accreditation, on or after January 1st of 2023 and prior till December 31st of 23, each law enforcement unit shall, 1, be certified at a minimum as meeting the requirements for state accreditation Tier 1, developed by the Post Council. Talks about the bill, and next slide. The previous slide that talked about we had between January 1st of 2023 and December 31st of 2023. This letter gives us our date, which is April 27th. So all along, assuming that we had till the end of the year to get accredited for Tier 1, we were incorrect.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
The December 31st, 2023 deadline is not a deadline for us. The deadline we were given is April 27th,
2023.
2023.
Okay, thanks.
the law states 2023, but this department is saying April 27th.
Right.
Is that to meet their requirement not to have everybody come in at the end of the year?
Yeah, I'll explain that in one of the slides coming up. So, if you want to know what accreditation is and what it does and why it's mandated, This talks about the internal review of our policies, procedures, training, and operations, and it measures against standards that the Police Academy and the state has set up. Tier 1 consists of 121 standards. That's what we have to have before the end of the year, or in our case, April. Tier 2 would be 83 standards and deal with professional certification. And Tier 3 would be general manager of the agency, and that's 118 standards. Go to the next slide.
And these
So-
have to be maintained to be, once Tier 3 is complete?
Yes.
So this is.
It's not, it doesn't go away. Right, so each standard builds on the previous standard, talking about, for instance, policies and procedures. You may have a policy dealing with domestic violence, and then you have to provide proof that you're following your policy. They come, want to pull reports, they look at the proofs of this, and then in Tier 2, it may build on your relationship with the court as part of domestic violence. So they build upon each other. Some of them are new, some of them will just deal with different topics, but these, the initial tier is just a step. And you have to maintain that ongoing. It doesn't go away.
So once you've achieved all of the standards after Tier 3 is complete, it becomes like an annual
Yes.
accreditation, or is
It's an
it
annual
you-
review.
Okay.
Prior to this law being passed, this was a voluntary process, and certain departments would do this, and the National Accreditation Standard, or CALIA, is quite expensive, and I'll get into that in a minute, but the requirements for all of this were volunteer up until the law was passed. So what does accreditation do for the departments that were allowed to volunteer and now are being told? It strengthens our crime prevention, control capabilities, essential management procedures, fair and non-discriminatory personnel practices, improve service delivery, solidify interagency cooperation and coordination, like I just mentioned, so with the court, and it would boost citizen and staff confidence in the agency. So the next slide, to answer Steve's question, this is one page of the accreditation schedule that the entire state has until December. So as you can see, some departments were given February, a few in here at the end of the year, some are ahead of us, and a lot of municipalities are going through the same process as we are, trying to scramble to meet this unfunded mandate.
And you asked for an extension, right?
Sorry?
You did ask for an extension to the
Yes.
state, and it was denied.
Right. So this is talked about the history of the law. 2020, they tried to pass it to require all departments to be CALIA certified. That's the national standard by 2025. And just for some of the information I found online, the initial fee to apply for CALIA certification is $12,000 with a $4,000 annual fee for renewal. The second attempt, that did not pass. The second attempt was in 2021 with House Bill 6597. That introduced an option of CALIA or state certification or accreditation. That did not pass. And in 2022, Bill number 135 passed, and Public Act 22-119 was put into effect. Next slide is the Public Act. You can read that.
John, was the volunteer, when it was done voluntarily, was that not working, or is this just another way for the state to have their hand in our pocket?
It was working, but it's so labor intensive to maintain that there was only a handful of agencies that had it. For example, Bridgeport just got it like last year, and there's a reason why it's not it was not as well received, I guess, as you might say, but the legislature felt it was important to have everybody do it.
And Bridgeport, I would assume, has how many people maintaining this every year? 4, 5, 6?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
Probably quite a few with that many police.
in my research, trying to find out what some of our neighbors or what some of the other agencies were doing, majority were doing it in-house with somebody that they could dedicate full-time to do this, because in speaking with some of the area chiefs, it is a full-time position. It is not something that you can have a part-time person, which I really believe we would have been able to do. But with our current staffing, we are not able to do this. We talked about the deadlines for Tier 1, the end of the year. 2024 is going to be a fix-your mistake year, 2025 Tier 2, and 2026 Tier 3. And then it just becomes an ongoing maintenance of the accreditation standards. So we developed a plan for compliance this year. We started reviewing we've been reviewing our policies and procedures for the past 5 years pretty steadily. Prior to that, they were kind of piecemeal. We do use Daigle Law Group for our policies and procedures through a company called Howard DMS, which is recommended for accreditation. It makes it a lot easier to attach your proofs to your policies. I talked about how other departments are handling accreditation, how they accomplished it. Was it a full-time position? Was it sworn? Was it civilian? Majority are sworn, and it's a full-time position. Some have gone the way of hiring a civilian former police officer accreditation manager to come in and do it that way. And like I said, because it was a previous volunteer mandate, or not a mandate, volunteer accreditation, there was just towns that could departments that could afford to do somebody, give it to them full time to do. We sent our records manager, who we went from 2 positions in. We went from a full-time position and a part-time position in records to just a full-time position. We sent her to some training because I thought maybe we'd be able to do this part-time. And we began to review, after she got the training, we began to review all our Tier 1 requirements, and very quickly realized, and through our own experience and through dealing with, talking to my peers, that this was not something we were going to be able to do on our own. I met with Tara, First Selectman Carr. I met with Human Resources to discuss accreditation mandates and whether we could afford to hire an accreditation manager. I requested an extension of the April 27th deadline. That was denied. I met with with an accreditation consultant that the City of Derby and the Milford Police have used, just to get a feel on what we would need to do, how far we were from meeting the standards. And I started looking for salaries and what the full-time accreditation manager made. And because it's Connecticut, it's new to Connecticut, there wasn't a lot of research to pull up. The one person I did meet with, the one consulting company, next slide, is a former police officer who was injured on line of duty, and you can read this. She brought the City of Milford to their CALIA standard in record time, and then was brought on, I believe, as a consultant to work for the city. City of Derby recently hired and spoke very highly of this person to do their accreditation and their policies. So when I had her meet with records and go over our policies, and we're not that far off because of Power DMS and because of the policies we purchased in the past and have been working on. She provided us with figure of $19,500 to help us, and you can see her plan to get us there, to Tier 1, and in turn, make sure we were on the right path with Tier 2 and Tier 3. So my recommendation was to ask for intra-agency transfer, which I think Marcia's going to talk about in some of the salaries that we've saved and some of the funding we haven't been able to use in our current budget. Questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So these various tiers, as we go there, how much of like Tier 1 do we already do? We just have to document it versus creation of new policies, new procedures, new whatever. We pretty much have most of this stuff. We just have to document it. Is that right, John?
We have a lot of policies. We have over 150 policies.
Right.
Close to that. According to, and correct me if I'm off a little bit, but I think what you're asking is, she said we were not that far off, but I don't remember exactly how many policies we need to still publish to meet Tier 1. We have a lot of stuff in place that
Yeah.
will meet the other standards.
Yeah, that's my question. I love 118 standards, I think you said. We probably have most of the capability to meet those standards. We just have to codify it in a way that will be acceptable.
Right.
But that takes a lot of work, right?
It does. Each policy takes weeks because of, it'll go for review, subject matter expert in the department, or have to go outside and have somebody take a look at it.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
goes through each manager in the department to look at it, come up with suggestions. Yeah, HR has access to our policies, and then Diane will review it for grammatical stuff, and then we have to create a test, publish the policy, publish the test. The officers have to get a certain period of time. We usually give them 2 weeks to review the policy, answer the test, and prove that they understand the policy.
Okay.
So there's over 300 standards that have to be done by April. Tier 1, 2, and 3. Is that right?
No, that's 2026.
Oh, right, you said, okay, Tier 2 is 2025, 2020, yeah, okay. So 121 standards by
Yeah.
April. And this lady can get the job done.
Yes, she's guaranteed us.
What happens if we don't make the April 27th? You get a slap on the wrist, you get, what happens?
Or our
The
money
state-
back.
The state has assured, there is no penalty
Okay.
in the statute, in the Public Act. However, the state has assured us they want to work with us to make sure that you get accredited.
Okay.
So, it's the first thing I asked.
Okay, I'm good, John.
What was the penalty?
Yep.
I don't think we're going to be, I think we'll be fine.
Okay.
But we can't do it ourselves. And going forward, my plan was to put something in the budget request next year.
We're gonna have to do that, right?
Right. Be it another full-time accreditation manager or another consultant, but something we're gonna need to do and we're gonna maintain.
Okay.
Is this something that could come out of the police activity fund or not really?
That takes 3 months.
Okay.
I have to go to the police commission first, then the board of selectmen, then the board of finance. On a good day, I might be able to get them all in 2 months, the way the meetings line up. But I think, and Marcia can speak to this, I think we have the money in our current budget that we can afford to move it.
So tonight, are you formally asking for approval of the Board of Selectmen to make an intra-department transfer of what, $19,000? Is that
19.5, yeah.
to?
I'm
to pay
giving
for
you the
consultant?
background so that when she asks,
That's in the request?
Yes.
Okay. I'm good.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
That's interesting.
Okay. Do you guys have any other questions for John on that before we move along? Okay. So quickly on announcements, I did just want to touch on the cell tower situation. The siting council's decision is supposed to be made in February. I learned just before the Christmas holiday that there's another tower which will be coming to the Long Meadow Road area near the high school somewhere, and that's a Verizon tower. They already apparently have a resident who's willing to provide property for that 5G tower to be put up. We are underway with our license plate discovery. They started, I believe, the week after Christmas. Capital Tax Recovery was the firm that we partnered with through the bid process, and they have already identified over 800 plates that are not registered to the town of Brookfield and that are not contributing to our grand list. So they are doing fine work out there, but I did want to remind people that
We want to clarify, they found 800 cars in driveways that had non-Connecticut plates on them. It doesn't mean that they're Connecticut residents. It could be somebody visiting, right, from New Jersey.
Right, well, they have.
Then they
so-
go through the process to say, hey, is this car registered so-and-so? And is that house registered to so-and-so, right? Is it the same person? Is that car registered to them, but in a different state, right? When
Right,
it should,
so
when
it's
we
out of
think
state
it should be
plates.
registered here.
Or unidentified vehicle.
Yeah, okay.
There are vehicles that might not have a license plate. So it's not just out-of-state plates, but vehicles that are not registered to the town of Brookfield.
Right.
Coffee with the Community will be on January 8th from 9 to 10 at Jester's this month. We still have several vacancies, a total of 15 on our boards and commissions, so I would ask that the DTC, RTC continue to do fine work to identify residents who are willing to volunteer. And the Charter Revision Committee will be having a public hearing on, is it January 30th, Kristen?
Yes.
Okay. At 7 PM in room 133 here at Town Hall. 2 notices as a reminder to just clean up after your pets in our public spaces. There's been several complaints of this, and right now the Parks and Rec Commission and the Conservation Commission are working together to figure out the way forward on that. I guess there's been many conversations on this in the past, as far as whether or not to provide doggy bags for the users of our open space, our trails, et cetera.
There's some at Burr Farm right now. I think an individual, some good spirit has put some up there. I see people using them.
Yeah, well, there's been many complaints, so more people need to use the bags, so again, does the town take care of that cost and the work associated with that to keep our spaces clean? I would just, encourage people to be considerate of others and do the right thing when they're out there with their pets. Same thing with speed across town. There's been many complaints recently about Route 25, but it's not just that road, it's all our roads. People are flying and not paying attention to the speed limit sign, so just putting out as a reminder to slow down, be careful, be patient, and if you have any complaints, you can take them to Chief Puglisi. Any other announcements? Nope. Moving on, correspondence as listed. Any concerns with that?
No.
Hearing none, over to Marcia for your long-awaited financial update.
I'm glad, thank you for those of you that are still here, but I'm losing some, look at that. Okay, there's a number of housekeeping items that we want to go through. One is that the town is the beneficiary of a trust. Walter Lenk, when he died, he set up a trust for the money to go to his children and then his grandchildren, and as they die, the library will get 5% of the trust. And one, sadly, grandchild has died, and we have some paperwork we need to sign in order to get that trust. And in order to do that, I need a resolution by the Selectmen to say that it's all right for Tara to sign that paperwork. So that's the first item. Do you want to do the resolutions as we go through, or go back to that?
I'd like to do them as we go
Yeah.
through.
Any questions on that, the trust or the resolution?
I don't have one, but I probably shouldn't make the motion, right? If I have to sign it, or does it not matter? Doesn't matter? Okay.
And I'd also suggest having the library board trustees sign as well, Carol, just to satisfy the trustees, to make sure that they have approval from everybody who may have authority to
Okay.
accept the funds. Because
Okay.
I think the library itself is the actual beneficiary, but we're doing this just to appease the bank as trustees.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions on this trust?
No, I'm aware of it.
Okay. So the motion would be that the attached resolution titled Resolution Designating the Closeout of a Certain Bond Project and Reducing the
No,
Authorized.
this resolution before that.
I'm on the wrong resolution. Aha, thank you. So the motion would be that the first selectman of the town of Brookfield is hereby authorized to sign on behalf of the town of Brookfield any and all paperwork as may be required for the distribution from the Carl Link Trust for the benefit of the library. The town clerk is hereby authorized and directed to certify to any interested party that this resolution has been duly adopted, is in full force and effect, and is in accordance with the provisions of the charter and state statutes, and should be signed by the library board of trustees
As well.
As well, yeah.
as well.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the second one is we've got bonds outstanding, and we've started in the last few years to close them. So we authorized bonds, we didn't need them. We want to close them to reduce what is showing that we can take out if we wanted to. And so under Roman numeral 2, number 1, that you elected to close the streetscape project at your November meeting. There were $205,000 of bonds there. And so we want to formally, you've already closed the project, we want to formally make a resolution closing out the bonds so that they're no longer shown as open and able for us to take out. The resolution was attached in a Word document. So that is Roman numeral 2, number 1. Any questions on that?
No.
So it was 205 worth of bonds, but the transfer will be for 736.
You're jumping ahead again. The one right before that, it says Streetscape Phase 6. It says in the resolution 205, but in my summary, I didn't write 205.
I'm sorry, in the documentation, it says 736.
That's the second resolution that we're going to go.
There's no resolution between the Link one and the 736 one. At least I don't see it.
Roman, on the agenda, Roman numeral 2, number 1, it says this,
Oh, the recommended motion might have gotten cut off.
The project
I think
proposed
it's
was
No,
on the
there.
next page.
It's,
This is attached file
saying
name 1 resolution.
I have.
Oh, I see, it's underlined, right.
Yeah.
Okay. It's right here, Steve.
Where is it?
This one, it's kind of meshed together. It's just this bolded part. I think that's what she's saying.
Oh, I see, I see.
Yeah, that's why I was confused.
It should have been separated. Okay.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the attached resolution titled Resolution Designating the Closeout of a Certain Bond Project and Reducing the Authorized and Unissued Amount for such project, as we note to be $205,000.
yes.
Okay. I'll second that.
Boy, that's a little confusing.
No question.
Just for clarification, so when we closed this out in the November meeting, it was for that amount, Marcia, or?
You closed out the whole thing, which was several $1 million, but that was the local share, yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions on that.
No.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The next one is the first time we've done this transaction, that a number of projects were under budget, and we've been keeping track project by project. And so in total, we had 736,148 of projects that were under budget. We had already taken out bonds for that, but we won't need them because the project is under budget and closed. So we want to say, well, we're gonna, instead of taking 6 million out for the radio project, we're gonna take 736,000 less. We're gonna apply the bonds to the radio project and take less money out, which, for example, if we took some of these projects out 2 years ago, they're bonded at a 1.55% interest rate, and now we're looking at 4% interest rates. So this is a good thing to do. And we should, both of these, we should be doing continuously as we go along. So this resolution is to transfer all the extra money from a lot of little projects, and there's a list in the resolution that were under budget, and use it so we don't have to take as much out, or we didn't have to take as much out in our December bonding.
Yeah, so for the public, if they don't understand it, we're not bonding any new projects, we're not getting any additional money. What we're doing is taking funds that had already been approved and given to the town, we had gone out to borrow, and applying them against projects in the future. So we'll, instead of just, we're gonna get a rate of 1.55 versus having to go out borrow that full amount for the new projects.
Correct.
And it's all listed so anybody can see.
Yeah,
what-
and it's a housekeeping issue that, we've got some really nice records. So going forward, we should be doing this on a regular basis.
Agreed.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the attached resolution titled Resolution Transferring Unexpected Bond Proceeds from Certain Capital Projects to the 2022-2023 Capital Improvements Project for the Townwide Radio System.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
No.
None.
It's a good news story. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank
All
you,
right.
Marcia.
Roman numeral 3, we're getting it every quarter. We come to you with budget transfers. And the first set, Roman numeral 3, number A, you have a list of the budget to actual, and then there's a summary of the transfers. So there's a number of intra-department transfers, and that includes, for example, the biggest one is the police moving money from their salary lines because they're short-staffed to cover those professional services, and a number of small ones in other departments as well, moving money within the department. It just needs the Board of Selectmen's approval on that motion. There's a second motion for inter-department transfers, and that's money going from one department to another department. The majority of these are staffing changes where it's either costing us more money or less money. We've had some retirements. We unfortunately had a death. And sometimes the staffing, when you pay out the vacation, gets doubled up. Sometimes it's a savings because there's a break in the middle. We've got some utility transfers that we're saving money on a sewer assessment. It's costing us more money for fuel. So what we're looking for is to approve the intra-department transfers, and then approve the inter-department transfers and send the inter-department transfers to the Board of Finance.
What are are they totaled here?
They're not totaled because they total zero.
They're zeroing out.
Yes, and so we're pretty pleased that we can do it with transfers and we don't need any additional appropriations. So we're not adding to the budget, we're just shuffling the budget.
For both intra and inter?
Yes.
I was looking for the totals earlier, too. nice when things are balanced, right?
It works nice.
So the snow plowing bid, I just had a question on this undergrounds. The snow plowing bid, we obviously took a guess as to what it would be, and they came in, this is for this season, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that one
And,
hurts.
and Mary from Public Works, instead of doing it a 2-year, she did it only as a 1-year, so we can see what happens next year if we go out to bid again.
Are we gonna have any more issues with the new school and the snow plowing, like we did last year?
We should be set the same with that.
We should be good, right?
Yes,
That's included?
as far as we know, that
Okay.
it was included in the original
Okay.
budget.
Okay.
This is everything we know as of today, that,
That increase there is only for these three parking lots.
Yeah, a lot of money.
Maybe next year we look at a pay-as-you-plow type of a contract.
Maybe.
It's been so mild, there's no snow, we're paying all this money. I reviewed this earlier, I'm comfortable with it.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I'm comfortable with both the intra and inter.
Right.
Do we need two separate motions, or can we combine intra and inter to make one motion?
you could do one motion, only one is going to the Board of Finance, but you could do one.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve both the intra and inter-department transfers as shown on Marcia's attached budget versus actual,
I'll second it.
and forward to the Board of Finance for their vote on the same,
I'll
for
second
the
it.
inter only. Any discussion?
No, not for me.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 The next one is the bonded capital projects and transfers there, that if you look at the paper, it's got a blue highlight at the top on the title. And what we're doing is closing out some projects. Most have a little bit of money that are left in them. The one that doesn't have a little money left is Phase 6. You closed that. There was some money that had already been charged to it, $6,544. So we're funding that, and everything else will go down to like a holding account, that if we don't need it for other projects in that bond year, we will take it and close out those bonds, just like we just did, apply them to some other bonds. The total that we're closing out is $61,452.
Can you just describe briefly the transfer between the school security accounts as requested by the Board of Ed? Why are we making changes for the Board of Ed? I'm a little confused.
That's on the next resolution for the cash capital. We're talking about bonded here, but for the Board of Ed had 3 different projects, and we've been going back and forth on what should the process be.
Oh, I got you. Okay, I'm done.
You're on C,
Okay, I'm
we're
good.
still on B,
I jumped ahead.
I think, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct.
So that 61,452, I'm sorry, Marcia, where is that on total?
That's on page 2. It's the subtotal of all the projects. It's this, not the bottom subtotal, but the one above it on the second to the right column.
I gotcha, okay.
That's just the total of the projects that are closing, and then they go into the proper year where they're closing.
Okay. So can I make a motion, please, to approve the transfers noted in the proposed closeouts and project transfers on the attached summary, and forward to the Board of Finance for their vote on the same in the amount of $61,452?
I'll second it.
Any discussion on these capital project transfers?
All right. The next
I
one.
did have just a quick kind of,
Oh, you didn't
we
vote
didn't,
either?
yeah,
didn't
we
vote
didn't
yet.
vote, but I do have a question. The 3-wall replacement at the Wiskaneer, was it, oh, okay, it was the third little wall, right? I happened to be there on Saturday and I guess it is 3 walls, but there's other walls that weren't redone, so that's a conversation for another time. But so that 700,000, what is happening with that? In blue there?
700,000, the blue just means that that's a journal entry we haven't posted yet, that it's posted now, but as of the time I pulled this schedule, that was the bond coming in for 700,000 for the wall.
Okay. And that has nothing to do with that motion I just made. I was just
Correct.
curious about that. Okay. Any other discussion on those?
None.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the next one is capital that we pay for in cash. There's nothing on page 1, but on page 2, there's 2 Parks and Rec projects that we'd like to close out. One being the compact wheel loader that came in under budget for $2,100. And the second one being the tennis court crack repair. We approved a new tennis court so that they don't believe they need the crack repair. So those 2 would be closed out. And then about midway through the page under education, the Board of Education approved some changes to their projects. And again, this is kind of a new procedure where we ask if they're changing their projects, they approve it first. And there was some money for security in Huckleberry and Center, and they would like to take that and apply it to the middle school instead. And you received a letter requesting that from the chairman of the Board of Ed.
Can I get a motion?
Motion.
I'll read it. I'll make a motion to approve the transfers noted in the proposed closeouts and project transfers on the attached summary and forward to the Board of Finance for their vote on the same, noting that this includes the transfer between the school security accounts as requested by the BOE.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
None.
Did you have a question on the school security, Steve?
No, I was jumped ahead. I'm okay.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then the last schedule is just the ARPA schedule. We're not asking for any transfers. It's just to show you where things stood as of December 31st in the ARPA fund.
Yeah, so as we move into the budget, we have to decide what we want to do with ARPA here. But how much longer do we have on ARPA to spend, Marcia?
We have to spend it or obligate it with a purchase order or contract by December 31st, 2024.
Well, we have time, I guess we could choose to do nothing. And the balance is,
We've got money that we're using for the debt bubble of 1.9 million. The amount that's not been allocated at all yet is 214,266.
all right. Any questions on ARPA or anything else that Marcia has?
I just have one request. These printouts, with glasses, I have pretty good vision, but with people who do not have good vision, there's no way they're gonna be able to read something that doesn't even take up half this page. Can we make these bigger?
Yeah.
On the page?
Yeah.
Just so it's easier for people to read? Thank you.
When you're looking at on the computer, you can obviously zoom in.
You see what I mean?
For us here, yeah, my eyes.
We can fiddle with it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.
I just thought it would be prudent to give just some quick updates on the items listed here under number 6. As you know, back in May, the referendum approved $6 million of spending for the townwide radio system upgrade. I had applied for and was denied funding for a grant from Senator Murphy's office. But as an aside, just yesterday it was made public that New Fairfield received over $2 million in an almost identical grant for their radio upgrade. So that's quite disappointing. Additionally, last summer we hired a consultant who was supposed to get back to us by December. I was anticipating early December with the pricing and the contract from Motorola to get us locked in before the end of the year, where we would be recipients of discounts. But the contract from Motorola didn't come in until Saturday, December 17th, and their request was for us to sign the contract the following Friday, the 23rd. So he immediately met as a group via Zoom on the 19th, and we just decided that there were way too many gaps and too many questions, and some of our members of the radio upgrade group didn't even have time to read the 93-page contract. So we agreed to put all of our questions in writing, and we met again later that week, which we did. And our consultant was present at the meetings, and there was a liaison who is the go-between the consultant and Motorola themselves, who were very helpful in giving us the information that we requested and answering a lot of our questions. And during that meeting, I decided I need to just call Motorola directly to ask for more time, because I didn't feel, I just couldn't with good conscience take this to contract, not to mention the fact that I think it's supposed to come to the Board of Selectmen because it is a contract, and we just didn't have time before the holiday to really grasp what the heck this contract said. So I called Motorola directly together with Marcia, and during the course of that conversation on the phone, I had requested an extension of 90 days to the contract. It sounded like that was something that they'd be amenable to during the conversation on the phone. Later that evening, I got an email saying that they were unable to support that request, but that they, in lieu of the 90-day extension to the clause, they offered us some kind of a modified milestone in payment terms. So with a contract signing date on the 29th of December. So it was all just very, it was kind of thrown at us in a very hasty manner. It was very last minute. They were really trying to get us to sign this thing before the cutoff of the end of the year in order to benefit from the incentives, which were in the total of $400,000. But then we'd have to turn around and recommit that $400,000 for site work at each of the locations to accommodate this new system. So having said all of that, and having denied signing the contract because I was operating over the holidays within like a 7-day period to understand the terms of this contract, which I was not comfortable doing, I said I'm not signing it. So fast forward to this week, the radio group will reconvene on Thursday at 1:30 to continue our discussions and try to move forward. So for me, it's twofold. I've been asking all along, what opportunities do we have for grants after I was denied earlier this year. I'd like to try again before we do anything else. If other municipalities are getting grant money for the same exact product, why can't Brookfield? As well as better understand exactly what this contract is and what we're purchasing.
I'm sure this is true, but Dennis, you're reviewing these contracts? So what has
Well, push it back
Motorola
up there.
offered?
They're going to be working through the issues directly with the consultant, and then once they
Okay.
figure that out, they're gonna send it
Yeah, I'm
to
fine with that,
final
okay. So where do we stand right now? We don't have a firm quote from Motorola?
We do. It's $5.9 million, which takes us right up to our budget with no contingency. And to add to the problem, Board of Ed wasn't included in the initial proposal.
So if we had signed the contracts back in December, let's say everything went perfectly, has the price changed from that offer to today?
We don't know right now. And I think it's all contingent on supply chain essentially, and
I think they're gonna stick it to us. Okay. Yeesh. That's not good.
I think as well, when this was all transpiring, there were going to be maintenance fees and other fees that I don't think was in the information that was given to us. Is that correct?
there was a lot missing, including the Board of Ed, which was a huge component, a piece of this
Wasn't the Board of
puzzle.
Ed part of this all along, right?
Yeah. So we would have been signing,
Are we seeing a bait and switch kind of thing here?
I don't know what happened. We haven't gotten that far because all of this, when the contract came out on the 17th, I mean, it was literally, they were backing us up against a wall for a signature before the
Well,
29th of
salespeople get
December.
paid on the fiscal year.
I understand
They
that.
want a signed contract by the end of the year.
and correct me if I'm wrong, but if we did agree to sign it back down, we'd be signing a document where we didn't have the information that we were we'd be making a decision
But how does
on something that we didn't.
something like that, like, miss the Board of Ed? It's been part of the discussion all along. Motorola was aware of it, right? So how can that be missing? Is this company competent to do this work if they can't even quote us properly?
Well,
It's a little worrisome, isn't it?
That's a great question, and I have not had a chance to pick up the phone and talk either with the consultant or Motorola directly since the 27th was our last conversation.
Yeah.
Major Frings is the lead on the group, but I'm almost thinking we might need some kind of a committee to take us there because these guys and gals are the end users. None of us are we don't have expertise in any of this. So we're trying to purchase a $6 million product. It's not just like buying a mansion, it's buying
Yeah, but we have a
all the
consultant to
parts
help us,
individually
right?
that make up the mansion.
Isn't a consultant supposed to be telling us this?
And in his defense, he was waiting, he thought he was gonna have us the contract from Motorola earlier in December. And he said during the meeting, when we were all sitting in what's the room number? Upstairs, 209, that he was waiting and asking, and Motorola just didn't provide. And then when they think to add to that, Marcia?
And we also have site, $400,000 or $500,000 of site work that we need to do.
On top of the 5.9 million? Well, this is a gift that just keeps giving, huh?
So it makes you wonder, they were giving us a $400,000 incentive, but out of the other side of their mouth, they're saying we have to pay $400,000 in the site work. And we didn't have a list of what that site work entailed, we didn't have a pricing list for any of the goods to be procured,
So what was the incentive for?
the discount at the end of the year.
To sign by the end of the year?
Right.
So we don't get that? Huh. Tells you the kind of profit margins they've got in this thing if they can offer $400,000 off just to sign a contract. Wow.
And again, there are grants available. 2 million, we could really use $2 million right now to help us out in this situation. So, I'm gonna request an office call with, Congresswoman Hayes' office and Senator Murphy's office.
Did you talk to Chris's office to see?
Yeah, and they sent me a laundry list of the projects that were approved. There were over 100. Some were for radio upgrades, and Brookfield was not granted a penny.
Did they give us any specific reason why Brookfield was not approved?
No.
That's interesting.
Okay, so that's it on the commo system debacle. The salary study, when I started this position last year and through the budget process that I walked into, it became clear that we potentially have some areas where there may be some salary disparities in certain areas of our municipal positions. And through the referendum process last year, you probably recall, we allocated $20K towards the salary study to review the compensation for the non-union positions. But we have yet to commit that funding because of a lot of reasons, primarily because we've been very busy, but also because we discovered that we're not alone in these disparities across all municipalities in the state of Connecticut. If you've been following the news and what's happening at the legislature, the state of Connecticut's state employee salaries have all increased, but municipal workers' compensation has not caught up to what's happening or what's commensurate with what's happening in the real world. I spoke in depth with CCM. They came here and they did confirm that we're not the only town currently working to bring our rates up to par. So Fern discovered that there are 2 towns currently that collaborated within Fairfield County, and together they hired a consultant to conduct a salary study of somewhere around 8 towns, Brookfield included. And their findings will be conclusive at the end of January. So we're waiting for that report to be done. They're gonna share it with all of these 8 towns. And additionally, New Milford, which is not in Fairfield County, just concluded their salary study, and they're folding into this budget and their budget for next year.
And that is a independent vendor that's doing the.
I don't know
stuff.
how New Milford did theirs. I think they.
No, the other one down south.
Yes,
The-
they hired a consultant.
Yeah, there are a lot of issues here that you have to look at. CCM does issue a report that shows every salary by every position across all 169 towns and cities in Connecticut. The problem is, they don't show things like, how long has that person been in office? What's their degree of education? Do they have any separate accreditations? What did they do before they had this job? So you only get a number, and it's really hard to place a number against the person because you don't know the details. And when we do, one of the reasons I was in favor of the salary study last year, because I ran into the same problem. You can get salaries, you can look at towns about our size, and salaries are all over the place. You don't look at the benefits. Do they get benefits? What kind of benefits? Do they get the same medical? Do they get the same dental? What kind of retirement plan do they have? Defined benefit, 401k. All these things add into determining what a salary should be. And you need to look at all those things to come up with a salary that is reasonable, appropriate, and fair for the marketplace. So that's why I'm in favor of doing the salary survey. You can wait to see what these 2 towns did, but Fairfield, you're going to get numbers much higher in Fairfield. Lower Fairfield County and northern Fairfield County are very, very different. The job here that pays $80,000 will pay $130 to $140 along the water. Same job. Towns pay more. So you need to look at both that because you are in a regional area, and you also need to look at other towns of similar size to Brookfield, similar obligations. What are these jobs? What do these jobs require? You know, it can say, and I had this problem, you have, okay, this job, assistant town clerk, right? It turns out that this person only enters data, but they're still called an assistant town clerk, right? The assistant town clerk in Brookfield does things much differently. They actually act as a clerk in many ways. So you have to really look at all these things when you do a salary survey. So I would, even if we get this information from the other towns, which is the more information the better, I would be very much in favor of doing our own survey. New Milford's doing it, right?
They actually, I believe they did it for free by establishing a committee to do the work. So, look, it's very complicated, and yes, I agree with you 100%. And it's never apples to apples. But the one example I really like to use, and this is going to come up through our budget process, is the sanitarian. That position, when Lisa Yu left, has been vacant for over 6 months. Right. She was making a salary of $55,000 a year. If you look at the salary ranges, going north to Litchfield County, going to the Gold Coast, wherever, you are hard pressed to find somebody at $70,000. So these are the types of inequities that I'm talking about. In order to attract the talent, which is there's very little of, we have to be commensurate with what's going on. And that position is
I agree with you
vital.
100% on that. We have to be competitive if we want to attract reasonable staff. You offer the lowest salaries, you're going to get people who will work for those salaries. I'm sorry, it's true. You pay for the best, you get the best. So what you want is the best person at the best possible value for price. And you're right, Lisa, you was underpaid. We knew that, but it's really hard to get there. And that's why I think a salary survey would be a good idea. Because you're going to be I think you're very hard pressed to replace her for $70,000. That's going to be very hard to do. You're right.
And that's a position that we really can't shy away from because we need to have our establishments inspected to
Yeah,
keep
you're
our,
legally
to keep our
required to do
people
this
safe.
work.
And we can take a look at that study, see what the information has that they, and then compare it to, you know, what the study actually entailed, whether there were any other details, whether it's
Yeah.
just a number or whether it's based on, you know, something other than just giving us a number.
All right, so I kind of just want, I felt like I deserve, or you deserve to hear a little update of where my head is on all of that, and that's just where I am. And I've asked that the directors provide detailed analysis and data as part of their budget presentations, because in order to support any requests they may have regarding salary, we have to have the substantiating
Yeah.
documentation and data behind it to support it.
You sure do.
Graffiti bridge, which is our coveted, I think it could be a sensitive issue because some people like it the way it is and it's a traditional landmark. But I've also had several complaints and inquiries about the state and appearance of graffiti bridge. And I just wanted to run it by you guys to gauge what you think, because I talked to Housatonic Railroad, and Matt, he's been very kind and gracious, and they're offering to have it taken care of as far as painting the abutments and then doing some work to clean up the bridge itself. But I also spoke with Ralph, and he has some other suggestions on potentially what could be done. So do we want to leave it as is, or do we want to try to clean it up?
Well, it's private property. It's owned by the railroad company. There has always been an unwritten agreement in Brookfield that high school football team wins a state championship, they go down and they paint the bridge. Through COVID, nobody's been doing that, and to some people, it's an eyesore. There's no doubt about it. To other people, they consider it part of the spirit of Brookfield. And you get opinions that vary, and I see all of them. But the the end of it, we don't really technically have any say over the bridge, right?
Not we being we do the work, but Housatonic Railroad is willing to clean it up.
Well, I would say go ahead and clean it up. Then the question becomes, is the Housatonic Railroad going to come to us when a high school team
Right.
posts on it and says, hey, are you going to arrest
But
these
can't they-
graffiti artists?
They can't, well,
John?
When I started, that was vandalism.
We would, yeah.
And then it became accepted because it was so widespread. And then it got to the point where the town was supposed to clean something.
Yeah, it's a can of worms, it really is.
I understand it being kind of a tradition and things, but I know there's times when I go underneath that bridge and there's something on, you know, not written on the walls, but on the actual bridge itself. And, you know, some of the letters or whatever fall off, and it's not real attractive.
No, sometimes, but then people also, the Brookfield Market, the market has done it, right? They put up a sign, okay, road race this coming
Yeah,
Saturday.
I actually like
Those
that.
things are helpful,
Right.
I think. And I think most residents like that. And it's a quirky thing about Brookfield. And I kind of like it the way it is. I don't have a problem with asking the railroad company to clean it up. I mean, that bridge seems to me like it's about to fail, but I'm not an engineer.
100% they say it's safe. That was
Yeah,
my first
yeah.
question.
The concrete is literally spalling off of the entire thing, so I'm sure they get it tested and it's safe and everything. But as many people, if you said, okay, clean it up, we're gonna try to patrol and not let anybody paint that bridge, you're gonna get as many complaints on that side as you get people say, well, it's an eyesore.
And there's just decades and decades. I mean, I'm
There's
guilty
an
of
inch of
having
paint
painted
on
it
that
when I was like 15 myself. So, yeah, I don't know how they'd clean it up, but look,
They're
I'm
gonna shoot a
I'm
coat of paint on it, is what they're gonna do probably.
blank canvas for class of 2023. All right, well, I'm gonna ask them to clean it up and see what happens. Are you guys good with that?
Yeah, I mean, I understand. I think there's far less people that would complain about cleaning it up than not cleaning it up. But, I can't believe, like Steve says, I mean, I can't believe that this bridge has not been under some type of reconstruction. It's, even the way it looks, even if it's structurally sound. It's one of the ugliest looking bridges you go under.
Okay. Yeah, aesthetically, it's not pleasing, but, okay, moving on. Last update that I have is on the Brownfield Grant Award. You probably remember, we went out to bid to partner with a developer. We were successful in finding that partner in Brookfield Village LLC. And then in September, we completed and submitted the grant application. Fast forward to December 12th, where we were a recipient of the award letter, and they brought to our attention that we will be receiving $1.2 million to remediate, abate, demolish, and rebuild the existing building at 20 Station Road as a part of Governor Lamont's initiative in the Brownfields program, round 16. So last week we had our kickoff meeting with DECD to determine our path ahead. We have until April to agree to the terms of that award, but there's a lot of work that has to be done between now and then, one of which is a town meeting. Because the grant is over $1 million of town expenditure. So I'm giving you this update because I want to gauge if you are on board with moving this to town meeting.
I have a question with it. If the grant is based on us rebuilding that building, that's not what we're planning to do.
We're not rebuilding anything.
Isn't that what the grant, you just said the grant was, we were gonna get X amount of dollars to rebuild?
The stipulation is to partner with a developer.
Oh, okay.
So the developer can build.
That's not what it sounded like.
So this is, this is an affordable housing application? Is it AMI or SMI?
I think it's AMI.
Do we have the details on that?
It's all in the original application that we submitted in September.
Yeah, we got that, I'll look through that, okay.
I think it was in the September Board of Selectmen meeting then? Must have
Yeah,
been.
I think that's right.
There's a lot of nuances to the stipulations of this grant. Obviously, we're working with DOH right now. Dennis has been really helpful in trying to figure out if we can get the green light on some of this, because, for example, with the affordable housing, we have a moratorium, as you know, but the stipulation of the development is to incorporate affordable housing units. So,
Excuse me.
are you okay?
There's someone down the road. Yeah, I'd like to see the entire grant, because it is incredibly complicated.
I'll email it over to you guys
Okay, thank you, I
tomorrow.
appreciate that. And Dennis, you're looking through that too?
Remind me of that.
Oh, yeah, my
For
office
any
has, yes.
fall points, any trip points, anything where we might, as a town, object, right?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Consent agenda, unless anybody had anything else on that.
No. I lost it.
I'd like to make a motion that the selectmen approve items alpha through delta on the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
I would like to recognize our new police, potentially police officer, Trizanda Falcone. She's at the police academy now. Anastasia DeVol, she's replacing Ann in the assessor's office and had worked for Lori in the building department over the past few months, as well as with Andrea in the clerk's office. And then Ben Ferry, who is replacing Ryan Soto as our behavioral liaison as part of the ARPA funding. Did you second that, Steve?
Sure, I second that.
Any discussion?
None?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And our last item is for an appointment. We did have 2 candidates that were recommended, one by the DTC and one by the RTC. I'm not sure if you gentlemen had time to review the forms that were attached, but I'd like to go ahead and vote for that appointment. Have you had time to look at it, or do you need a few minutes?
I have looked at both.
So I think they're both qualified.
Yeah.
They both seem that they would do a good job. But Zimmerman was put up first. He was recommended first. And I think normally when we take an alternate to full-time, we take the person with the most experience and the most time as an alternate to make them full-time, as long as, you know, the R&D thing works out, and I think we should do that here, and appoint Mr. Zimmerman, because he expressed interest first.
Yeah, I don't, and with these situations, I don't know if it's necessarily a who can race to get the forms in first. I think it's a matter of, you know, looking at all aspects. I agree with you that they're both qualified. I would say that I think Mr. Zimmerman's been involved with a lot of activity across town, whereas the other individual seems new to town government, and I'm of the cloth that it's great to bring in fresh perspectives and new people and welcome families to participate in our local municipal form of government, so.
So basically, we're making this political. At a last Board of Selectmen meeting, you refused to take up Mr. Zimmerman as an appointment to the calendar, or even though we've had his name, it was all here, it was ready to go, Ginny had it ready to go, and you just said, I don't want to take it up. So you didn't take it up so you could find a Republican to put up.
No, that's not true.
No, really?
Mr.
Gee, it looks that way, doesn't it?
Zimmer didn't submit the application on time.
It was submitted the day before, and we have forever, and I think if we
His
got
email
Ginny
came
here.
at 4:45
if we
on Friday.
Yes, if we got late, both R and D applications for board appointments, if they came late, we added them onto the agenda that day at the Board of Selectmen meeting. This is the first time in 7 or 8 years, 7 years that I'm aware of, that we did not take a request to put somebody up onto the board's agenda. We put it off. So that sounds very, very political to me.
You made it political earlier when you said we should follow suit if it's an R or D, and actually the vacancy is for an R, which I didn't go there, you did.
Yeah.
So I'd like to take this to vote. All in favor of,
Well, I didn't find out about the first applicant until Monday.
Yeah, I didn't either.
So, and again, I know Bob, I know he is new. I think that we do need new people. We've got 15 vacancies, we'll have 14 after this one is appointed. And I do think that we need new, fresh people in, new people in, and that's why I would pick Bob, and it is not political. So, that's my 2 cents.
all in favor of Mr. Zimmerman?
Aye.
All in favor of Mr. Fischetto?
Aye.
Aye. So I'd like to make the motion that the Selectmen appoint Robert Fischetto as the alternate on the Parks and Rec Commission for term of today, the 9th of January 2023 through the 5th of February 2024, as recommended by the RTC.
I will second that.
Any discussion?
Yeah, this is the wrong thing to do. We've never done it before. We've never delayed an appointment that came in a little bit late before. We never have done that.
Have you
Never.
had 2 candidates before?
Yes, both at the same time. Every candidate we've had that even have come to us on Monday at the Board of Selectmen meeting was brought up as an item that you would add to the agenda that night. Every single time. Every single time.
So it's a race
There's
to
only
who
once
gets the
have we
forms in
delayed it.
first?
Only once have we delayed it. It was last month. And we delayed it for one reason.
It wasn't
So you
on
could
time.
find an R to put on this
It
board.
wasn't on time, Steve.
Yeah, we've done this hundreds of times
And-
because
but see,
we're a
that's-
small town. We accommodate people. We do the right thing.
We should accommodate people by getting in new people.
You
Well,
guys
well,
are
here,
gonna do
Steve,
what you
let me-
wanna
let
do
me-
anyway.
Let me
It was
make a
just
comment.
approved,
I've
so.
talked to Ginny about this, and this is one of the problems with how we handle our agenda. If you need to have, and what I would like to see is put in a policy, or I don't know if it's policy or procedure, is that if you have an item that is gonna be on the first selectman agenda, that needs to be in no later than the end of the business day on the Tuesday before. Let me just finish.
I agree.
Tuesday before. We get too many, we get them on Monday afternoon. And now, if it's an
Yeah.
emergency situation, fire comes to us or police or something, and it's something we have to get on. But this is one of the reasons why we shouldn't be doing that. And I didn't even know at the time who's in what, to be honest with you, okay? And I found out Monday afternoon, and I said, no. I said, my vote is, I don't think we should do it. Put it on tonight's agenda. So, I mean, you can say it's political, and it may.
So for these other 14
We've
vacancies.
always done it before, now it
Well,
changes.
there's a lot of
Gee, I
things
wonder why
across
it
town.
changed.
Well, there's a lot of things across town where you say, we've always done it that way. And it leads to a lot of problems.
If you wanted to
Why do we
change it.
always have to do it that way?
If you wanted to change it, you should have done it and say, in this case, we're gonna take it up, we're gonna add it to the agenda, but going forward, if you don't have your application in by 4:00 on Friday, it is not going on that next Monday's Board of Selectmen meeting, going forward.
That has been the case, Steve, and you know that, but because Aaron was new, I don't think he understood, which is why in the correspondence right here, I wrote back to him and explained
Right.
how it is.
He wasn't aware of your timeline. He was thinking 5:00, which he got it in before, but we
Town
closed
hall
at
closes
4:00.
at 4.
But what I'm saying is, and you know this is true, we have always, if we got late requests to appoint people to boards, we have done it. We have added it as a new agenda item. This is the first time we have said, we're not gonna take it up, we're gonna wait till next month. And guess what? All of a sudden, we have a new candidate.
And not for nothing, but
Gee
the
whiz.
vacancy was a Republican.
Yeah.
Cassie moved to permanent member, let's not forget that,
Yeah.
okay? So all in favor of Mr. Fischetto?
We already did that.
No, we didn't, we had discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
Aye. I don't have anything further on the agenda, anything else?
no,
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, can we get a motion to adjourn? Thank you.
Yes.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Time for my peppermint